matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Boom. Taylor, we are back recording. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Have you recovered from the weekend scare?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's what
We are good to go.
4 or 5 days will do.
Yep. All good.
Do you want to tell us what the name of the show is?
Yes. Hello. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures twice a week, every week. Today is Wednesday. I am Taylor, joined by Faris.
I'm Fars.
Hello.
Hello. So you kind of teed us up already that you're going to be talking about 9/11.
I'm absolutely not talking about 9/11. I just wanted to say, let's never do 9/11.
Here's the thing. Okay, I'll say this. Like, I think we're so we're different, right? Because you were there, and so you experienced it in like you experienced it differently than people across the country experienced it because like you saw it. And
Absolutely.
there's elements to 9/11 that I think I could keep kind of scratching the surface of because like we know the big picture of it, but there's like probably like individual stories within it that like
Nope.
you don't know. And what are you saying?
Nope.
It's not worth knowing?
I don't want to know them. You can learn them. You can teach
Yeah.
them to other people. I listened to the last podcast one, which was really a long time ago, but they had
That
like
one's rough. That one's
it's
really rough.
rough.
That
Fuck.
one's
They had like
that
some
one's like
phone
the
calls and shit that I had not
yeah.
heard, and I'm not okay. So yeah, just let's not do that. Okay.
That was the that was the one of the few last podcast episodes where I never went back to.
Yeah.
Most of them, like the Oklahoma City one, by comparison, I think I've listened to that probably the entire series like 20 times because when they do their like redneck accents, it's like
It's
the funniest
fun.
thing in the world.
Yeah.
But
The
anyway.
Jonestown one gave me nightmares. That was a lot
Yeah,
too.
I also don't like going back to that one.
Yeah. Those are ones they played like anyways. Um, but I did want to tell you something related, similar stories. I have 4 other stories of times that planes hit buildings in New York City.
Oh yeah, I love this. Yeah, let's hear it.
Cool. So there are 4. We'll go backwards from today, and we will start with October 11th, 2006. Do you remember this one? Like,
Is
the
this the
only other time is
IRS
since
attack?
9/11. No, this is they're all accidents. This is when New York Yankees pitcher Cory Lidel crashed into an apartment building on the Upper East Side.
Oh, that sucks.
So if you're looking at New York City, like a map, it goes north, south, whatever. The east side is on the right. The Upper East Side goes against the East River, and then across the East River is like Brooklyn and Queens. New Jersey's on the other side, just to think about what New York City looks like. Um, Another thing, I know that we were just talking about how going to an island would be very dangerous. Another thing that I think is very dangerous is if a rich person is like, why don't you come with me in this little plane that I own? I'd been a pilot for like 100 hours.
You're only saying that because JFK Jr. He like ruined small planes for us.
No, I'm saying that like it happens all the fucking time. And that's what happened here.
Yeah,
And it
well,
happens a lot.
fine. I'll stand corrected then.
I mean, do it to your own peril, but I'm not doing it. So Cory Lidel was 34 years old. He was a pitcher for the New York Yankees. He had spent some of his time in the minor leagues. Also, what did I mention about you? Oh yeah. So he spent some time in the minor leagues. I don't know, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but it sounds like he was kind of a jerk. It took him a while to get into the MLB because in 1994 there was a Major League Baseball strike, and he was one of the strike breakers and went in and played anyway. Um, on May 8th, 1997, he finally joined the MLB and joined the New York Mets. He's gonna between 1997 and 2006, I don't know how common this is, but he plays for like a bajillion teams. He plays for the Oakland A's, the Toronto Blue Jays, the Cincinnati Reds, just and more. Is that
I
common?
I bet because salary caps are really really weird with like
Hmm.
baseball. MLB is like really weird. It's like a whole science around it, and I have no idea
Yeah,
how it works.
totally. There's like Moneyball.
But it's like the Yankees somehow are able to sign 15 players each with salaries of $200 million a year, and it's still under their salary cap. Like they must be doing some weird trading stuff. It has to
Yeah,
play into like that part of it. That's not
yeah,
normal for most professional leagues, though.
yeah. Um, when Corey was traded to the Yankees, he was traded from the Phillies, so he was also on the Phillies, and he said, quote, of the Phillies, he said, quote, on the days I'm pitching, it's almost a coin flip as to know if the guys behind me are going to be there to play 100%. So basically blaming it on everybody else when they do poorly. He's like, it's not
I
my fault, it's everybody else.
By the way, Taylor, like that is actually not that uncommon. Like the star receiver always blames the quarterback, and the
Oh,
quarterback
no,
always
totally.
blames the star
I'm just giving
receiver
examples of
or
times when
the
he was like
offensive line.
kind of an asshole.
Right.
Um, later when he was on the Yankees, in the last game that he played, he said we got matched up with a team that I think was a little more ready to play than we were, which made the manager really, really mad at him, and he had to go on the like, sports radio to apologize, and then he got in a fight with the sports radio hosts. So like,
So that could be a reason why you get traded a lot
yeah,
because
that's what I
like
mean. Yeah,
yeah, like if you're someone who like or is that disruptive, then yeah, your manager wants to get rid of you.
exactly. So I think that's kind of his attitude. He was married. He had a son born in 2000, so his son was only 6 at this time. But now it is October 11th, 2006. I am in grad school, I think. Juan and I just started dating, so it's a very exciting time to be in New York City. And Corey wants to fly to California where he has a house. I actually think that he's from like, I think it said that he's from like Riverside, like where, like really close to here, or West Covina, really close to where I am. So he wants to fly his small plane to California like he's fucking Amelia Earhart and can't just buy a plane ticket.
I mean, it would be fun to have your own plane, Taylor. Like, let's be honest. Like, you know that'd be cool as shit.
No, no, because I know I would die on it.
Yeah, but if
If
you're
it-
flying it,
Yeah. Why would I? No. I want to be in a plane that my friend Ben is flying because he was in the military and now he flies for a major airline.
yeah, that's fair. I'd rather fly with Ben too. I don't even know you, Ben, but I think I probably would rather fly with you than fly myself.
Yeah. So the plane that he owns is a Sirius, Cirrus SR-20. It's a teeny little thing. He's leaving Teterboro Airport, which is in New Jersey, and he's going to go to Nashville that night, then to Dallas, then get home in California. He is not alone on the plane. He's with his flight instructor, Tyler Stanger. I think that he was not qualified to fly like totally by himself, like across the country like
Right.
this. He's not a millionaire. So they left Teterboro, they circled the Statue of Liberty, then they went up the East River. So if you go up the East River, you have to turn around Roosevelt Island, which is kind of in the middle of the East River. And when they made that turn, it has to be a U-turn, and you have to be approved to make that turn. You have to have radio contact with like air control. But it sounds like he didn't. He was flying pretty low at 700 feet and he's on visual cues, which I feel like I learned a lot when I was like when Kobe Bryant died and we were
Yeah.
like reading about that, where like the pilot was off radar on visual cues. We were like, use the radar.
No, Taylor, he wasn't on. No, hold on. That situation was different. He was supposed to be on. So he was on radar, but he wasn't rated for pure instrument flying. It was you trying to
Right.
do it. Right. Okay. Are we saying the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. I'm misunderstanding
Yes.
then. Sorry.
So they're on visual cues. And at 2:42 p.m., he hit the 30th floor of the Bel Air building on 524 East 72nd Street. So it's an apartment building. A woman named Alana Ben-Huri was home, and it was her apartment that he hit like directly. She suffered burns and shrapnel, and her housekeeper was there and helped her escape. So she actually, no one in the building was killed, and no one on the ground was killed, which
He
is,
flew into her bill. That's can you
and it's
imagine? You're like just because someone just like crashed a plane into me. Like that's
and 9/11 just happened 5 years ago.
how freaky. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like a big brick building, which I think was probably part of the reason that it didn't cause more damage to like the building itself, because like one of those old like pre-war
Yeah.
buildings. Um, Obviously, Corey and Tyler both died when the plane crashed. They didn't know like what was happening, and there was like a little bit of like the FBI was obviously alerted, President Bush was alerted, but they pretty quickly realized that it wasn't like an attack or anything. It was just a dude, and he had made a poor U-turn and did that. So it was not deemed a national security issue. No flights from JFK or LaGuardia were halted. Just also to say, there's like JFK and LaGuardia are in Queens. Newark Airport is in New Jersey, and Teterboro is a little bit further out in New Jersey. They're all like kind of far away from the city, obviously. Um, Corey's family tried to sue the makers of the SR-20 and say it was their fault, but the court threw it out. They were like, no,
I don't.
it was a
I'm.
pilot's fault.
I'm
But
like.
they don't know who the pilot was. There's no way to tell. But it's either Corey or Tyler who was the pilot.
So my guilty pleasure like in nights is watching Mayday or Seconds to Disaster, which is like or
Ooh.
Airplane Disaster, which is like all these like really highly produced like 40-minute long shows about like crazy airplane disasters
Hmm.
because it's just like I don't know why I find it so fascinating. I think it's because like the things that go wrong are things that nobody would ever think would go wrong, and then they go
No,
wrong. You're like,
totally.
why did
We've
nobody
talked
think
about
of
that
that?
so many times. It's like all the little tiny things and like how also like they learn from each thing and all of that. But like in this case, it just sounds like they just like made a shitty turn and they didn't have give themselves enough space.
Yeah, which like where I was going with that was like, why don't you just fly higher? Just like you could
Totally.
like you could go higher than whatever you could assume is in front of you. Just fly higher. Like I don't get it. Like
I know. I feel like maybe you're not allowed to
you
at
flew
the.
into someone's apartment. It wasn't like you flew into like the
No, I know.
penthouse of the Chrysler building. Like
No, I know. I understand. I don't know the answer. I do know that like the rules are going to be changed after this, and you can't fly in visual cues only on the East River. Like
good,
you have to be more contact. Also, like there's bridges. I don't know. There's so many things you can hit if you're flying that low, you know?
wild.
Um, so that happened in 2006. Then 2001, 9/11. We're not talking about it. Then the 60s and 70s. So these involve helicopters. And there's one story that has to do with a building, but then there's a bunch of other crashes that happen along helicopters. I'm going to tell you a little bit about those too. This story kind of reminds me of like the hubris of the Concorde. Like some things are just they take the time they take and you don't push it, you know?
Are you talking about like literally the hubris of the Concorde? Is that like a reference to like a play?
Oh, like literally like the hubris being like we need to get here as fast as possible and like break the sound barrier.
I mean, yeah, but yeah. All right, well.
You know, ended in disaster. We've talked about this. And then we were like, just take your 7 hour flight to London.
No, but it didn't end in disaster because it was the Concorde. It ended in disaster because there was shrapnel on the tarmac after the previous plane took. I watch a lot of these shows, Taylor.
No, but the Concorde didn't keep going after that.
Well, it didn't keep going after that, not because of that accident. It didn't keep going after that because it was already a super expensive program for British Airways to maintain, and they were literally only doing it for the prestige. It was running at a loss, and it was just a pure business calculus thing.
Okay, I'm yawning at your mansplaining.
Do you want me to send you the airway disaster
We literally
documentary?
talked about this when I talked about the Hindenburg. We were like, you should just like take a ship or you should just like take a long flight. Like, there's no reason to push it and do something dangerous. Because the Concorde has crashed before.
I
Anyway,
don't. I don't think that's true.
it did. It crashed on the runway before,
I know it crashed once, and then they shelved the program.
but it all. I think it happened before.
Are you googling?
I guess I have to now.
I mean, I'm totally fine being fact checked, but I do remember after watching 1,000 of these shows, their
It crashed
issue.
twice.
Oh, it did. All right, fine. How do you like womansplaining to me?
I like it because woman's bleeding involves looking stuff up and just telling you the truth.
No, If you say something with enough confidence, it sounds true.
That's exactly what mansplaining is. Congratulations. You just mansplained mansplaining to me.
Double whammy. Mission
All right.
accomplished. Fine, we'll
So
move on.
anyway, some things take the time that they take, is my point. It's kind of hard to get to the airport in New York City. So it's like $100 cab ride. And it's only after I wrote all the ways down to get to the airport, it's not that hard. It's just like the airports aren't like in the city, which makes sense because they shouldn't be.
Right.
So like it's $100 cab ride. There's a bus from Queens, but you have to take the subway really far to get there to get to LaGuardia. I once told my Uncle Dale like the directions vaguely, and he missed his flight because he like didn't make it. And like it's just like not easy, especially before you had like a iPhone. There's a train to JFK and the JFK Air train. Actually, last time we went to Newark, and it was pretty easy. You take the Amtrak in from Newark. Um, and anyway, I also was reading this. I finished reading this book, and I feel like you sent me something. This is a really weird, deep dig, but you sent me something in January about like goals for the year, and someone's goal was to finish reading The Power Broker. Do you remember that?
No.
Anyway, this is The Power Broker. This book is so big that when I opened it today to find the page that I wanted to find, I found a leaf that I'd been pressing because I pressed flowers inside of it. That's how big this book is. But the in the Power Broker, they talk about how Robert Moses, who built all of the highways in New York City, and to the detriment of lots of communities, but he wanted people to use the highways, so he had an opportunity to build like a really easy train that went to the airport, and he didn't do it because he liked people to be in cars. And I was mad when I read that.
Yeah,
So I was like, how
what a
much
wasted
money
opportunity.
I spent on freaking cabs. But anyway, it's the 1970s, and there is a company called New York Airways, and they are a helicopter company. They offer a shuttle service between Manhattan and local airports. New York Airways operated from 1949 to 1979 out of LaGuardia. They're one of the first like they were doing like a passenger helicopter thing. So it was like a nice helicopter. There was like a flight attendant, and it can take you places like really, really quickly. And it went all over the New York City area, especially like hopping between airports, which I think, people still obviously like use helicopters a lot in New York. There's plenty of helicopter ports. I worked at a hedge fund. My boss, one time he spoke at Princeton, I think, and he took a helicopter. It took like 10 minutes to get there or something like ridiculous. So like
Wait, wait, this is normal so people in New York take helicopters regularly to the airport?
rich people do.
So
That's my point.
there's not like a taxi that like you can just
So that's what this was. It was expensive, but it was like they would do like in the late 70s, they were doing like 24 um flights a day from Manhattan to the airport. And I'll tell you about that in a second, like what that was like. Um, but they would land on a helipad in the 70s on top of the Pan Am building, which is now the MetLife building in like the middle of New York. So it would land on top of the building, and then take you to the airport. So a few non-building related crashes. In 1963, a helicopter crashed after takeoff from Idlewild. So JFK used to be called Idlewild. So off from JFK Airport, and 6 people died. In 1969, they were running late. So a pilot at the airport in the helicopter decided to take off from not the place that he was supposed to take off from. And they got stuck and like they got pushed in like a jet stream from a big plane that was going off the way it was supposed to. And that caused the helicopter to crash. 3 people of the 14 people on board died in that accident. They took a they had been flying from the Pan Am building in the middle of Manhattan to JFK pretty regularly, and they took a break for about 10 years. I don't know exactly why. That's probably a really big reason why, but they resumed doing it in 1977. And actually, I know this is also pre 9/11 like security and shit, and you just had like a piece of paper and they would like let you on an airplane, but you could, and this like my initial point with the hubris part is like just take the train or take a cab, like whatever, but you don't have to do this. But this sounds fucking amazing. You could get to the MetLife building in the middle of Manhattan 40 minutes before your flight left from JFK. That's how fast it was. It took 10 minutes to get there. So you could check in at the MetLife building, get on the helicopter, 10 minutes to JFK, and get on your plane.
dude, I think that's why Kobe did the helicopter thing because he just skipped
It's just easier.
traffic. Well, because he
Yeah.
wanted to go because he didn't live in LA, I don't think. He lived like somewhere outside of LA.
Hmm.
And so he would just catch a helicopter from his house to Staples.
I read something that like reading about Kobe, how like he one time he went to someone's house for Thanksgiving and he took a helicopter there and he realized he forgot like the fucking pumpkin pie. So he helicoptered back home, got it, and then went back to the person's house.
How Taylor, how awesome would being that rich be?
I mean, it's just like I can't even comprehend it. It's wild.
So,
Wild.
uh, one day.
So but this was it was like so like I guess to clarify like it wasn't like cheap like everybody couldn't do it but pe enough people were doing it you know taking this
Yeah.
like commuter helicopter over there. So in 1977 this is the building one. The helicopter was on the roof of the Pan Am building when the landing gear broke and it was like just like sitting there like a helicopter. And helicopters also they're so fucking scary because there's no like gliding, you know. They
Yeah.
just fall.
Yeah.
So the landing gear broke and it tipped over, but the propellers were going. Five people on the roof were killed by propeller blades, and one person on the ground was killed by a propeller
Wait,
blade.
so was it stationary? Like it was
Yes.
already sitting, they turned the blades on,
Hmm.
the skid broke.
Yeah, and it tipped over.
Yeah, that's freaky.
And people were just like blendered on the roof. And then one guy on the ground got hit by a helicopter blade,
Jeez.
which is a wild way to go. So no one inside the building was hurt, but after that, they didn't do it again. They never went from the Pan Am building, which again, um,
Why? Why was the
2 year,
Pan Am building a problem?
I think it was just too dangerous to do the whole thing, you know?
Oh, they just stopped operations.
Yeah,
Got
of
it.
that part of it, of like
Got it.
because the helicopter pads in Manhattan are at like the bottom. They're like downtown, like to the side. They're not in the middle of the city, for the most part.
Okay.
Like they're like you could probably pay to grab a helicopter from like downtown New York, but like maybe super rich people in like hospitals have like helicopters on the roofs, but like not it's not like a passenger thing. Um, and then finally on April 18th, 1979, so 2 years later, a helicopter from New York Airways was departing from Newark Airport. There was a crash when the blades failed while they were taking off, and the helicopter plummeted back to the ground. 3 people died, 13 were injured, and that was the last day of New York Airways. They
Do you like
never ran.
always die when a helicopter crashes? Is it just like
Well, not everyone died in this one. That one was they weren't very high, it doesn't sound like, but I feel
it
like
just sounds like you
for the
hear a
most
lot
part,
more about people dying in helicopters than you hear about dying in like plane crashes.
it seems harder to survive because like it just
Straight
drops.
down. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Um, so that was that. That's the end of New York Airways and their helicopters. Um, going further back on May 20th, 1946, a U.S. Air Force Beechcraft C-45 Expediter, which is, you know, like a World War II era plane, crashed into 40 Wall Street downtown. It was headed for Newark. And again, like we want the airport to be far away from the city, so they were heading it, but they headed through Manhattan, which to your point, fly higher,
Yeah,
you know, like under
easy
the rules,
problem.
but um they hit the 58th floor at 8:10 p.m., which was nice because nobody was there. Um, and 5 people on the plane died. This was the incident, even though the last incident I'll tell you also had to do with fog, but this was the incident that caused them to make the rules that you cannot fly over New York City in heavy fog, which totally makes sense.
Again, so many of these things, you're like, why did nobody just say that?
And so I have another story just like incidentally. So I was listening to Case File. Did you ever listen to that?
No, never got into that.
So the most recent episode on Case File was about a boat called the Bluebell, and there's like a murder, it's a true crime story, all the things. But one thing that they brought up that I thought was really interesting is the Bluebell incident was in 1961 and a little girl survived and they found her like floating in the ocean. When she was floating in the ocean, she had was on a life jacket. The life jacket was white because up until that time, life jackets were white and then they were like, we barely saw her because the water is white when it like breaks. So that's when they changed life jackets to being orange.
It's like, duh.
So like after it, you're like, Well, duh, we want to see something bright orange and not white, which could be a color that you see on waves all the time. But like it has to happen before we like do things that are obvious in so many cases, you know?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know why. Um, okay, my last story for you is from July 28th, 1945, when a B-52 Mitchell bomber crashed into the Empire State Building.
I
Do you
remember
remember
this
this?
one.
I used to go to the dentist in the Empire State Building, which I thought was
Dude,
very
living in
cool.
New York has to be so wild. Like you're just like so close to so much just crazy history.
And I used to go to the my therapist was across the street from the Empire State Building, and I used to walk from work. No, I'd go to work, I'd take the train to her office, and then I would leave and I would walk past the Empire State Building and then go meet friends like on the east side, like every Tuesday or whatever. And one time I was walking past the Empire State Building and I just missed by like 3 minutes someone jumping off of it and landing on the sidewalk.
Are you kidding?
I was like,
That's
I told my therapist, I was like, I would have had to
oh
turn on
my
my
God.
heel and go back to therapy and be like, excuse me, let me back in
Is that
because
was that like a common thing?
I don't think so. I mean, it happens. I don't know how often it happens, but definitely it happened that day, and there's like plenty of stories of people doing it.
That's
But I was very
horrible.
grateful to have missed that.
I can't imagine like a worse. Oh God, so horrible.
No, no. Um,
It's like
so
also fuck that person that did that because like you destroyed the lives and like every dream a person would have who witnesses that for the next like 25 years.
I mean, I'm very grateful.
Like I would literally see that in my mind every time I close my eyes for the next like 20 years.
Have you ever seen similar another Empire State Building story, the picture of Evelyn McHale, which is called the most beautiful suicide?
No.
So I'm on Wikipedia real fast, but Evelyn McHale was 23 years old when she jumped off the Empire State Building in 1947, and she landed on a car, and she looks like she is sleeping, and the car roof is completely crushed in. Um, I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible, but like it's
It
if you
looks like she's laying in like a satin bed.
yeah, it looks like that it like perfectly wraps around her. And then like they when they lifted her up, like obviously her bones were just like all destroyed, you know? Like
So crazy.
yeah, wild. So yeah, people do it wild.
Which
So
actually, Taylor, that now I'm remembering that is the reason why I don't listen to the 9/11 episode is because they have video or they have
mhm,
audio recordings of people being like, "Is that paper coming out of there? No, it's a filing
mhm,
cabinet." Like, and then you can hear the gas, like, "Oh, that's a person," and then like they realize it. It's
mhm.
like, dude, like you don't want to be around that. You don't want to witness that. So anybody who tries to kill themselves by throwing themselves off a building, like, do it somewhere different. Like
I mean, it's just traumatizing
well,
for
don't
literally
do it,
everyone.
but like if you
Don't do
do
it.
it,
Get help, all the things. But
definitely
like,
don't do it where you like destroy other people's lives.
yeah, I'm very, very grateful that I did not see that man fall off there. But anyway, we're on the Empire State Building. Um, it's World War II. A B-52 bomber is being flown by a veteran. He's 27 years old. His name is Lieutenant Colonel William F. Smith. And so the B-52 bomber is like a heavy World War II looking bomber. I was like, the Enola Gay was a B-29. I'm sure there's like tons of reasons why, but just picture like a World War II plane. It was very, very foggy. It was Saturday. So another very foggy day. And then again, like I used to work on the 38th floor of a building, and there were days where it was so foggy we couldn't see the street, you know? And they're going to hit the Empire State Building on the 79th floor. So if it's foggy, the people in the building also, like that plane would come out of nowhere, you know?
So scary.
Like you see nothing. You're like literally in a cloud, even when you're in the building. Just like hoping someone doesn't run into you.
Again, not to point out the obvious, fly higher.
Also like flying cars were never gonna happen.
Can you imagine?
It's so fucking dangerous.
Like what like also like the Jetsons, who wants to eat a pill for dinner? Like they
That's true.
lie
The
to us
people,
about everything.
no, no, dumb. They're never gonna work. People crash all the time on the ground. We don't need to add like another dimension to it. Anyway, so he got disoriented, like obviously he wasn't able to see clearly, and he was going low. And in this case, this actually maybe is a point when you're flying in the fog. I do think this happened in the Kobe thing too, where you're trying to get under it or over it or like whatever, you're like trying to find a spot where you can see. And so he ended up going down a little bit and he made a wrong turn. He almost hit the Chrysler building, turned, and then he hit the Empire State Building on the 79th floor at 9:40 a.m. One of the engines fell off, like in Final Destination, and hit the roof of a building a block away and burned an apartment, but no one died from that particular thing. The other engine fell down an elevator shaft as like, and they found it at the bottom. 14 people ended up being killed. So three people who were on the plane. So there's Lieutenant Colonel William F. Smith. There is another person. One of the people who was there, I read two conflicting stories, but his name was Albert Perna. He was a Navy machinist. He was ejected from the plane, and his body was either found at the bottom of an elevator shaft or on a building across the street, depending on who you believe. But poor Albert had hitched a ride on this flight to get home to see his parents because his parents had just found out that his brother had died in the South Pacific.
Ugh.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
Poor fucking parents. 11 people in the building were killed. They were working, it was Saturday, but they were working for the War Relief Services and the National Catholic Welfare Council. So it's like people doing like charity work, trying to help people because they're in the middle of fucking World War II. And they were the offices that were like crashed by the plane. It did cause a fire, but like the way that the building is built, the fire didn't spread and didn't hurt the building structurally. So the building like didn't nothing else happened. Um, so one woman, this is the last bit of this. This woman, Betty Lou Oliver, she was an elevator operator. So as you know, in the past, someone had to like do the elevator for you. So Betty Lou was the elevator operator. When the plane crashed into the building, she was on the 80th floor and she got burned and so, like flashes of lights and she was burned. And the people on the 80th floor, like rescue workers, were coming to her. They took her out of the elevator. They took her down a few flights to the 75th floor, put her on a new elevator to get her some help. She's on the elevator by herself and it goes into free fall from the 75th floor. There's no brakes. All of the cables are completely broken. She survives. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest elevator free fall survival.
Did she
She
jump?
told, no, she was injured. She was burned. Well, I think she was, okay, listen to this.
No, but
She
at the
said,
very end, I think if you jump,
no, 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 I know, but listen. She said, quote, I started yelling and pounding on the floor. I was going down so fast that I just had to hang on to the sides of the elevator to keep from floating. So she was kind of in the air. But so she was cushioned by like the air pocket that it made by going down so fast. And that's what saved her.
uh,
I mean, saved her. She broke her pelvis, she broke her back, and she broke her neck, but she lived.
be bad.
So she ended up dying like in her 70s and she stopped talking about it. She had a couple interviews and she was like, I don't want this to be like my legacy. I'm not gonna talk about it anymore. But she still is in the Book of World Records for that terrifying world record. There's a cute picture of her on crutches that I'll share with everyone.
Again, brakes on elevators in skyscrapers. Why did it take until this moment to realize we might need that?
I think they broke. I think that there were brakes, but they broke
Oh, okay.
in this case.
I'm
But
sorry, Otis.
I feel like the first elevator probably didn't have
All right, I
them.
take it back, Otis. It's your fault.
The last thing that I will mention is just incidentally. So everyone in the Empire State Building was able to go back to work on Monday. Like, didn't, unless you died, the rest of the building worked by Monday. The floors that were destroyed in the crash were bought by Armand Hammer, who's Armie Hammer's great-grandfather, so he could do his dirty business there. And that should be a whole story because I looked up his Wikipedia page and there's a lot of,
What does dirty business mean? Is it like P. Diddy stuff or
no, it's like in cahoots with Russia stuff.
got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other dirty.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know all the details, but it sounds kind of wild. But he bought those floors for cheap and set up business in there for that. Um, and that's it. Those are the two times in the 1940s, one time in the 1970s, and two times in the 2000s when planes crashed into buildings.
So several things. Okay, first off, things back then were built different.
I agree. I do think that like the brick, like the Empire State Building, have you been in it? No.
Probably not.
It's it feels heavy. Does that even make sense? It feels heavy in the way that like where we used to work in LA felt heavy.
No, I know. I
You know
think
what I
so.
mean?
When I mentioned like we talked at one point about like going to the Capitol and like different places in DC, and you're like this doesn't feel like it was built by contractors that I have access to hire. You know what I mean?
Right. Lowest bidder guys in all the
Yeah,
towns. Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
So because I also am reflecting on stories about like kamikaze pilots during World War II
Hmm.
and the distinction between ironclad ships and how we call what we call ironclad was like hey like they weren't meant to be easily destroyable and that's why they called them
Hmm.
ironclad and how kamikaze pilots like flying a plane into a ship would not sink a ship like
Right.
it would it would hurt people it would probably kill some and they could continue fighting like that afternoon after some patchwork and so
Right.
yeah they were just built different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But then the other thing it made me think of with your helicopter story was two things. One was on this Friday, this or like this past Friday, I was driving downtown and I don't live near a military base. I know you do, but like I don't see shit like that regularly. And I was in rush hour traffic in downtown Austin and you could just hear the chopping of wind
Hmm.
because it's so guttural. Like there's one time I went to a firing range and it was in the basement. It was like just surrounded by a foundation, and every time someone fired a shot off, you had earmuffs on, so you didn't totally hear the complete sound of the gunshot.
Hmm.
Your body
You like felt it.
compressed in ways. Yeah, you
Mm.
felt it. And
Yeah.
I was driving downtown, and I saw these five choppers overhead doing a loop over the highway, and then like kind of making their way around. It was like obviously like a military thing, and
Hmm.
I thought it was really really cool.
Yeah. I see those all the time.
And my favorite storyteller, I'm gonna finish with this. So I was when I was in law school in Miami, I was living on the 32nd floor of a building in downtown Miami. And this was maybe like a week before the correspondence dinner in 2010, I want to
Hmm.
say, somewhere around there. Hi, Flo. And in the middle of the night, I heard that same kind of reverberation, and I went on my balcony, and
Hmm.
there were these crazy looking helicopters that were flying right past my balcony to a
Hmm.
building that's higher up than my building, and men were falling down from it, and like coming down on a rope onto the
Ooh.
roof, and then another they would climb back up and then another chopper would come and they would do this they would do this routine over and over and you can tell when you're looking at like a weird operation because you're like this is the crazy looking helicopter and then like I have no idea if it's related. It was like a week or so later that Obama said that we killed bin Laden and it was a helicopter operation. I was like, dude, were they like practicing for bin Laden's killing like on that building? I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe.
It was really weird because like
That is
why
weird.
in the middle of downtown Miami, why would you have yeah, there's something when you look at and you're just like this isn't normal.
Yeah.
That was definitely not normal.
Totally.
And
Like
they
every
weren't
once in a while,
they weren't like helicopters you see on TV. These were like weird looking like I don't know. I don't
yeah, I see
describe
them
it.
all the time that have like two sets of blades. Like they're definitely military ones. You can tell. It's not like the traffic helicopter. Like different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're fun. Anyways, fun stories. Taylor, those are really fun. I'm on
Thanks.
this most beautiful suicide Wikipedia page. And the saddest part is reading her suicide note where it says at the very end, her suicide note said, "Tell my father I have too many of my mother's tendencies."
I
So like
know.
it's like that dad just berated that mom in front of
Mm-hmm.
her. And the
Mm-hmm.
mom was like, "You're just like me." And she's like, "I don't need to be, like you just
I
know that like
know.
it was just some horrible childhood abuse going on there."
Poor thing. That's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, just don't kill yourself. Everything's temporary.
Yeah. Yeah. You're probably
Anyways,
fine.
um,
Cool. Well, thank you for listening. I will See you all next week. You can find us at Doomed to Fail Pod, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. That's our website. That's our email, doomedtofailpod@gmail.com.
Please do those things.
Let us know.
Let us know.
Do you have
Let us know what you
thoughts?
think.
Do you have ideas? That's all.
I think we're getting better at this.
I mean, we've been doing it for a very, very long time, which is wild, and I'm really proud of us.
I'd be prouder if we could make money doing this, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, it's about to be sweater time, so I can start wearing my sweater with our faces on it to soccer games. That's my one way to personally advertise.
I'll drink from our mug tomorrow.
Um,
Um,
Kiara did suggest, I think I sent you this, that putting like little flyers with QR codes around Austin and coffee shops, you should do that.
so I was gonna do with my yoga studio. I should just do it.
Do it.
Okay.
Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
Where do you hold on? We can talk about this offline.
I can
We'll
make
go
you
ahead.
one. I can make you a QR code.
Let's wrap and then we can discuss it.
I also just
Anything
want to
else?
mention that, yeah, I was totally wrong about QR codes. I said these are dumb, no one's going to use them, and they people use them all the time. So I apologize to you, Mr. QR, who invented QR codes.
Uh, I kind of still think they're dumb.
Quentin Robinson. But I put them on like I feel like I made one for work to take you to like a Google Doc that says a bunch of stuff that you could just have up on your phone and like show someone. You're gonna put them on all cafes in Austin. I don't know. I think that they're here to stay, like the internet.
You think the internet's here to stay?
Not indefinitely, but
There'll be some
probably through our
variation.
lifetimes.
Probably. Probably. Sweet.
Cool.
Anything else to wrap on?
That's it. Thank you so much.
Sweet. We'll go to wrap and